Hey guys, it's CyberStone2296 and I'm here with a voice edit. Now today I'm going to be talking about a spooky story. And this podcast is going to be called Spooky Stories of October. This is taking place on October 22nd, 2023. We will be talking about the Russian sleep experiment. Now, I'm sure some of you already know about this story, but for the few who don't, I'll explain. The Russian sleep experiment is about a group of Russian researchers who sealed 5 prison inmates in an airtight chamber in the 1940s. According to the article, How the Russian Sleep Experiment Became a Global Phenomenon, the prisoners were dosed with experimental gas. This would prevent them from sleeping. Their conversations were electronically monitored, and their behavior was observed through a secret two-way mirror. For the first few days, everything seemed fine, but after the 5th day, they slowly began to exhibit signs of stress. They became paranoid and stopped talking to one another, whispering into each other's microphones. End quote, Fernando. From another article called Russian Sleep Experiment, Fact or Fiction, stated, the screaming started after 9 days. 2 restless inmates began running around their room, shouting so loudly that their vocal cords nearly ruptured. However, the sound abruptly stopped, and the chamber was silent. Fearing the worst, the researchers decided to open the chamber. The stimulus gas was replaced with fresh air on the 15th day. End quote, Rangaves. In the same article, How the Russian Sleep Experiment Became a Global Phenomenon. Suddenly, however, the voices stopped, and the chamber became dead quiet. Fearing the worst, the researchers announced that they were opening the chamber, but a voice from inside answered, "We no longer want to be freed." 1 inmate was dead. The inmate had been severely mutilated, flesh torn off their bodies, and stuffed into the floor drain. They seemed to have ripped open their own abdomens and even eaten their own flesh. They refused to leave by force, fighting back with a powerful aggression none of the researchers could have imagined they possessed. They fought fiercely against being removed and anesthetized. One even tore his muscle and ripped his bone apart during the struggle. When asked why they mutilated themselves, each gave the exact same answer: "I must remain awake." End quote, Fernando. From the same source, Russian Sleep Experiment, Fact or Fiction, stated the researchers wanted to kill the inmates and erase all evidence of the experiment. Still, their commanding officer requested that it be restarted immediately. With the researchers joining the inmates in the locked chamber, the principal researcher, terrified, shot the commanding officer in the head. He then shot and killed the last surviving subjects before they attempted to cover up everything. End quote, Rangaves. Now, after all this research I have done, I've been wondering if this is a real experiment or if it was just made up. Or maybe it's both. Inside the story, it talks about how these 5 inmates who went through the experiment. The Russian sleep experiment is about a group of Russian researchers who sealed 5 prisoner inmates in an airtight chamber in 1940s. End quote, Fernando. I do believe this happened, but I don't believe that they were going insane and killing and eating each other's flesh. 1 inmate was dead. The inmates had been severely mutilated, flesh torn off their bodies and stuffed into the floor drain. They seemed to have ripped open their own abdomens and even eaten their own flesh. End quote, Fernando. I believe this was added to make a good story for the audience to feel a creepy and terrifying mood. I don't believe that this story is entirely fake. I'm sure they did start an experiment to keep people awake so it helped them in the war and tested trials on people. I don't believe that people turn into monsters. What do you think about this story? How will knowing the story affect you this Halloween? Will it scare you? Will you dress up as a creepy monster? Thank you for listening to this podcast and tuning in. I'm CyberStone2296 signing off.